Welcome back. Today, we are diving deep into one of Ghana's most incredible legal battles. Seriously, this is a story about one man's fight for freedom, a powerful global organization, and a legal showdown that really put the soul of Ghana's constitution to the test.
At the very heart of this whole drama is one massive question. When a Ghanaian citizen's right to a fair trial smacks right into a foreign organization's claim for special protection, who wins? This case forced Ghana's Supreme Court to come up with an answer, and trust me, that answer affects every single one of us.
So how in the world did we get here? Well, it all kicks off with one of the most famous figures in Ghana's public life, and a business deal that went very, very wrong.
Okay, so let's meet our main character, Tsatsu Tsikata. Now, this wasn't just anybody. As the big boss of the GNPC, he was a major player. But he suddenly finds himself in court facing these really serious charges of causing financial loss to the state. The prosecution's entire case was built around an investment the GNPC made in a project called Valley Farms. For Tsikata, his whole defense hinged on one thing: proving this was a good, solid business decision.
Now, to prove his case, Tsikata needed some key evidence from a major player in that project. But this is exactly where a pretty standard trial blows up into a massive constitutional battle. He basically hit a legal brick wall, a concept that just says, sorry, you can't touch us.
Tsikata's argument was this: the International Finance Corporation, that's the IFC, part of the World Bank Group, had done their homework on the Valley Farms project. He was convinced their documents would prove it was a sound investment and would totally clear his name. So his lawyers did what you do. They got the court to issue a subpoena. That's a legal order demanding the IFC hand over those documents. Simple enough, right?
Well, not so fast. The IFC's lawyers basically walked into court and said, no. Just no. They claimed something called diplomatic immunity, and they pointed to this really old law from 1958. Now, what's so interesting is that diplomatic immunity is usually there to help foreign bodies work without interference, but the IFC was arguing that this protection meant they could just plain ignore a Ghanaian court order, even in a criminal trial. The lower courts actually sided with the IFC. So what did Tsikata do? He took the fight all the way up to the Supreme Court. Suddenly, this case wasn't just about financial loss anymore. Oh no, it was about the power of Ghana's 1992 Constitution itself. So the Supreme Court had to untangle this whole mess, and they boiled it down to two crystal-clear questions. First, could the individual country director for the IFC be forced to show up and testify in person? And second, even if that person was protected, could the IFC as an organization be forced to cough up the documents? Tsikata's whole argument was anchored right here, in this powerful line from Ghana's constitution. He was basically saying his fundamental human right to a fair trial, which obviously includes calling witnesses and getting evidence, was being stomped on. So the question became, does an old law from 1958 really have more power than this fundamental right guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution? And that question sparked this absolutely brilliant and fiery debate among the Supreme Court justices. It revealed two totally different ways of looking at the law and Ghana's place in the world. Let's break down what they were arguing.
It was a clash of titans. On one side, you had Justice Atugaba. He was all about the Constitution being supreme and that an individual's right to a fair trial was sacred. But on the other side, you had Justice Adinyira, who argued, hold on, an individual's rights have to be balanced against the wider public interest, which includes our international reputation.
Justice Atuguba's reasoning was just so powerful. He said that 1992 Constitution isn't just a dusty old book, it reflects what modern Ghanaians want for their rights to be protected. He argued that you have to read old laws in a way that fits these new constitutional values. For him, the freedom of one single Ghanaian on trial was way more important than protecting an international organization from a little inconvenience. But then, Justice Adinyira came back with this really compelling counterargument. She pointed right to Article 12(2) of the Constitution, which says that fundamental rights are subject to the public interest. Her point was that upholding diplomatic immunity is crucial for Ghana's reputation on the world stage. If you start forcing diplomats to testify, you could damage the country's relationships with bodies like the World Bank. For her, it was a balancing act, and the public interest just weighed a bit heavier. So, you've got these two incredibly strong opposing views. How on earth did the Supreme Court decide? Well, the final verdict wasn't a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. It was nuanced
and it perfectly shows you just how complex the law can be. Get this, the court split its decision right down the middle. On that first question, about the person, they ruled against Tsikata. The majority agreed with Justice Adenira that the individual IFC director was protected by immunity and could not be forced to testify. But then, on the second question, they ruled for Tsikata. They sided with Justice Otawuga, saying the IFC as an institution didn't have total immunity and could be ordered to produce those documents.
Okay, I know this might seem like some complicated legal drama from way back when, but the principles from this case have a direct impact on the rights of every single Ghanaian today. So why should you care?
Well, first, it established that your right to a fair trial under our Constitution is incredibly strong. Second, it sent a crystal clear message that while foreign officials get some protections, their organizations aren't totally untouchable. They can be held accountable in our courts. And third, it proved that our modern Constitution has the teeth to challenge and limit old laws that just don't fit with our democratic values anymore.
And really, if there's one thing to take away, it's this. The Supreme Court basically declared that when a citizen's liberty is on the line, the power of Ghana's legal system and the supremacy of its constitution come first, even when you're dealing with some of the most powerful organizations in the world.
So in the end, Tsikata got what you could call a partial, but absolutely monumental victory. Yeah, he lost the battle over the individual witness, but he won the war over the principle that foreign institutions have to comply with our court orders. This case was a powerful reminder that in Ghana, the Constitution is king.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The court had to do this tricky balancing act between individual rights and international relations. And it really makes you wonder, where should we draw that line? Should the need for a fair trial always trump claims of diplomatic immunity? It's a huge debate that is still very much alive today. Thanks for joining this explainer.